Coming back to practice, I take it from what you said, you've basically practiced in the High Court and Supreme Court. Did you ever go to the lower courts?
I have frequently in my early years gone to the district courts to practice in terms of appearing, but I have not practiced there in terms of working there for 6 months before moving to the High Court. So really I learnt all the ropes in the High Court and then did cases in the district court. Those cases were also in numbers not very large. I mean, I did maybe one every month or two every month, which is not much. But I don't agree with this theory that you have to be in the district court to learn good work. It is true to an extent in non-chartered High Court areas where the High Court does not have original side work at all. But I found my witness action matters which I did in the Delhi High Court fascinating. I don't think I could have learned more in the district court, because when you had a proper witness action, those days you did have witness actions. I have conducted full trials in the Delhi High Court. I found that it was very educative, and in a sense it taught you more substantive law and less to hang on by devious means, which might happen in the district court. Your teaching might actually get corrupted. In the Delhi High Court, it was a pretty good practice. Of course, the tragedy is in Delhi High Court also now, witness actions have become fewer and fewer. So today's practitioner might get a better deal in the district court. But I think it ultimately depends on whichever trajectory. I don't think it should be an invariable rule that you have to start in the district court. If you do original side matters elsewhere, it can work.
Most successful lawyers, I'm sure there must have been that one case when you were young which told you that this has given me a break, I'm moving ahead.
I may not be able to remember the exact defining moment, but one of those moments certainly was the NTPC-Singer case. Justice Deshpande was very fond of me as a young lawyer because he liked those who indulged in academics, and although the initial part of NTPC-Singer had been argued before single judge Delhi High Court by my father, he was not available subsequently, and Deshpande, who was advising and was the main lawyer for a retired judge advising NTPC, put his faith in me and said, go along with Junior Singhvi. And I conducted that case. I lost, whereupon NTPC persisted with me in the appeal to the division bench headed by Justice Kirpal, a very strong judge in a relatively new territory of law, that I argued entirely myself for more than 10-12 days as opposed by seniors. After which, I think entirely with Justice Deshpande, having lost the second time, NTPC must have been quite sick and tired, but they sought my written opinion on whether appeal should be filed. So I gave an opinion saying I felt there was something in my bones that this case had a point, and they decided to appeal. I myself, before they could say anything, advised them to have a senior. They couldn't persist me a third time and risk it. Mr. Shanti Bhushan and I were both engaged for the Supreme Court. Dr. Justice Tommen was the presiding over the bench, and after hearing Mr. Shanti Bhushan for one day, he was good enough to directly say in court that he also wanted to hear me as a second counsel. Mr. Shanti Bhushan was kind enough to say yes, he should argue separately. And I did that, and then the full rejoinder. Right. And lo and behold, after a few months, Justice Tommen reversed two judgments of the lower courts, and gave me a great thrill. So that was one of the earliest. But then, of course, the National Flag case subsequently, Jindal's case, where I always joke with Justice Khare that I travelled with him from Court 6 to Court 1. The matter went on several dates with lots of objections by the central government. Renu Sagar, several rounds with Venugopal and I. Yes. It was the case during which, right in the middle of the hearing, in June, when Venkat Chalaiya set down the matter for hearing for 20 days in the holidays in Court number 1 with an empty Supreme Court. In the middle of that hearing, I was designated senior counsel. These are all very interesting defining moments in the earlier years.
You were appointed amicus in the DK Basu case as well.
Yes, you're right. I should have mentioned that. Actually, I was appointed amicus very, very early on in 1987 by Justice Chinnappa Reddy, who happened to chance upon me in court and said, young man, what are you doing? You should get into this human rights thing. And I wasn't a senior then, of course, to be amicus by the Supreme Court in a matter at that stage.
And you must have been very young, if you don't mind. How old were you?
Well, I should say no comments on the grounds of self-incrimination, but I was very young, yes, because I happened to have the privilege of being the youngest senior counsel at 34, and that was some years after that. But that case, when it went on, um, I realized that a very simple point we were trying to work out in that case, and yet there was no answer. And that was, Justice Kuldeep Singh raised the point in the earlier stages, then went through Justice Anand and several other benches. Dr. Justice Anand gave the first D.K. Basu judgment. The simple point was, how do you create a safeguard which defines arrest? Because after arrest, atrocities can't happen easily, custodial atrocities.
Right.
But the simple way of getting around it is to show arrest on a date or a time different than when it actually takes place.
Right.
So I can hit you, beat you, deal with you,
Right.
and then show arrest 2 days later,
Right.
after which I have to produce you before magistrates and all that.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we had no simple answer. So I said that to the court, but I devised a set of 12 odd principles in my written submissions,
Right.
which Justice Anand was good enough to quote fully. And then something which happens rarely, he paid me a written compliment in the judgment,
Right.
which is a great booster to me personally. These are all very kind people who I think went beyond the call of duty to do what they did, but it does, reinforce your energy and spirit to do good things.